Will come to order as the Board of County Commissioners, December 19th, 2003. This is a special meeting. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Father, let us remember the true meaning of this season, to share with those less fortunate, to show kindness and compassion, to be thankful for our family and friends, and always put our trust in you. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you that do have an agenda before you, we're going to change the order of the agenda a bit. We're going to have staff open the item, and then we will call for public comment at that point. Mr. Murphy?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to start off with this, and then if there's any additional comments, they will come from the County Administrator or County Attorney. Madam Chairman, you have in front of you a memorandum dated December 18th regarding the subject of City of Port St. Lucie / Egan parcel annexation. This memo contains an outline of, kind of where we are and where we're going, and at the end of the day, it has a recommendation on an action for the Board to consider. For the record, I'm going to try and read through some of this so that there's a pretty clear understanding of a little bit of the history trail on all this. On December 9th, 2003, this board, by a 3-to-1 vote, agreed to enter into the conflict resolution process on the proposed annexation of the Egan parcel by the City of Port St. Lucie. The Egan parcel is located on the south side of Midway Road, along McCarty Road, just west of the current corporate limits, or at the time, the current corporate limits of Port St. Lucie, adjacent to the LTC Ranch. It is southwest of the Pony Pines subdivision. The purpose of entering into the conflict resolution process was to provide a procedure whereby an equitable, expeditious, effective, and inexpensive method of resolution of conflict between and among local and regional governments can be done to the greatest extent possible without litigation. In the case at hand, St. Lucie County has been and continues to be concerned over the proposed annexation of the Egan property and the intensification of development on a number of other parcels immediately adjacent to the city that are currently agricultural in nature and use, but are also subject to pending annexation issues. Pursuant to the Board's direction, I appeared in front of the Port St. Lucie City Council on Monday, December 15th, to request that the Council not take any action on the pending annexation of the Egan property in order to allow time for the conflict resolution process to work its way through the system. It was made very clear to the Council that the County was not initiating litigation against the City in this matter, but rather we wanted to be sure that the issues that affected the County in regard to these actions were being fully addressed. During the discussion on this item, Mayor Minsky asked a question and asked that I bring this question back to the Board of County Commissioners, and it said, in essence, if not the Egan parcel, then where? Realistically, where was it that we, the county, wanted to see this plant? Why were we so upset about this one particular annexation? We knew it was coming. We've asked for capacity in the plant. So again, why were we so upset? Well, in attempting to answer that question, we have put together a series of bullet points through this memo, and then also, and I think our other comments, we'll try to cover some of these points in there as well too. Following some lengthy discussion on this matter at the City Council meeting, and by a vote of 5-0, the City Council agreed to the annexation of the property into the city limits. The annexation ordinance has been received by the county, and there is now a 30-day clock ticking on any group or any party who may wish to appeal that action. In annexing the property to the City of Port St. Lucie, the city retained the current county zoning designation on the property of AG5. That's agriculture, 1 unit for every 5 acres. In other discussion and in follow-up discussion on the part of the City Council, the Mayor and the Council acknowledged the receipt of a letter from the Chairman of the County Commission where the Chairman was asking that the Mayor and the Chairman have an opportunity to sit down to go over other issues or issues relative to city-county conflict that could potentially be resolved through some face-to-face talk. Mayor Minsky asked for a consensus of the balance of the city commissioners, and the majority of the council members agreed that it was probably a good idea to come and talk, but, and the mayor was very adamant on this point, that the Egan parcel would not be on the table for a matter of discussion. As far as the city was concerned, the Egan parcel was annexed, but there were other issues that they would be willing to come and talk about. And I believe that correspondence or that indication has been forwarded back up here, but I'm not sure of that at this particular point in time. Over the past several days, there have been a number of questions raised about the intent behind the county's action in this matter and what our objectives are with regard to the location of the new regional wastewater plant proposed for the Egan site. For the purpose of addressing some of these questions, let me try to go through these following points. Question number 1, why did the county wait until the last minute to proceed with the action it took? The county did not wait until the last minute to take actions in this matter. The search for a new regional wastewater treatment plant in the South County area is not a new issue. As far back as the early 1990s, when the county was the managing authority for the utility system in the Port St. Lucie area, the county's own master plans recognized the long-term need for some type of new facility that would serve to take eventually the 3 smaller sub-regional plants in the city of Port St. Lucie offline. That master plan, however, did not specify any particular location other than being west of the existing city limits of Port St. Lucie, which at that time did not extend past I-95, with the exception of 2 small areas, one at the C-24 canal and one in the reserve. Approximately 2 years ago, the city began to approach the county on an informal staff level about the possibility of locating a plant in the unincorporated areas of the county along the Rangeline Road, Glades Cutoff Road corridor. Preliminary hydraulic reviews had indicated that that area was the best available for what was needed to serve the city. After those preliminary discussions on what would be involved if the plant were to be located in the county, the word that staff received back was that at the direction of the city's senior administration, utility staff was to begin looking for parcels that could be annexed into the city for development of this new plant rather than follow the county's guidelines. It appears there was little interest in trying to permit the facility through the county's development review processes. And that's fine. That was their choice to go and do that. In the first quarter of 2003, the city issued a request for proposals for potential sites that could serve as the site of a regional wastewater treatment plant facility. The city selected the Egan parcel as the preferred site for this new facility. The county was not a party to the site selection process, included in the review of submittals, or in the ultimate site selection determination. The county became more actively involved in this matter when in the late spring of 2003 it became apparent that the city was proceeding with the selection of a site that was raising concern in the adjoining neighborhoods of the unincorporated county. In this particular case, that would be the Egan parcel, and there's correspondence there's correspondence in your package that highlights that in the May time period, the county administrator provided correspondence to the city indicating that we had received a number of questions at various board meetings about this item and asking for additional clarification. In late May of 2003, the County Commission authorized the engineering firm of Lindell Browning, Ferrari & Hellstrom, LBF&H, to conduct an independent review of the site selection process done by the city and to try and determine if the selected site was indeed the most technically acceptable site. Copies of the relevant review materials are attached in the memo, and I'm not going to go into the details of that at this particular point in time. However, in short, the conclusion of the county's review of this matter was that a more appropriate site for this facility would be the area of the southeast corner of the intersection of Glades Cutoff Road and Rangeline Roads. However, that site was not considered by the city to be their number one selected site, and subsequently has been sold to other interests and is no longer available for the development of a wastewater treatment plant. In December, or late on December 8th of 2003, the county received notification of the pending annexation of the Egan parcel to the city. This was the final public hearing on this matter was set for December 15th. Since there was only one county commission meeting to be held between the 8th and the 15th, and that meeting was set for the next morning, December 9th, county staff presented an additions item to the board's agenda for the purpose of discussing this matter. At the conclusion of that discussion, a majority of the board agreed to authorize the initiation of the conflict resolution process with the city in order to try and address with the city the full impacts and ramifications of not only annexing of the Egan parcel, but also the impacts of several other pending annexations and future land use amendments, which were also to be heard that night. The board made it clear at the time of the initiation of the conflict resolution process that it was not the intent of the process was not to prevent and not, or was to prevent and not initiate litigation. From a global perspective, the city is seeking to annex new lands and provide for substantial increases in land use densities in areas that are previously much lower in agricultural use. It is the opinion of the county that the city has not addressed or even submitted to the county any impact assessments on how these land use annexations will impact upon county-maintained facilities surrounding those properties. In addition, county staff believes that some of the annexation actions being considered are not consistent with state law regarding annexations. County staff has acknowledged that by itself, in our earlier discussions with the board, the Egan parcel does appear to meet the annexation standards, and our concern on the other annexation issues are more, to be down the road, but they are still taken as a whole. They're raising some flags and some concern. Therefore, the initiation of the conflict resolution procedure was seen as the only remaining option open to the board to address the concerns of the surrounding community residents as to the potential uses of this property. Now, other questions that have come up relative to this matter is, what role, if any, does the Regional Planning Council have in this? At this point in time, the Regional Planning Council does not have any direct role. The Regional Planning Council would be used as a conflict mediator, if so requested by both parties, and the Regional Planning Council would be a reviewing body should there be comprehensive plan amendments presented for this property or other properties. Thus far, the only ones that have had a comprehensive plan amendment submitted are several pending annexation issues north and south of the Egan parcel. The Egan parcel, as I said earlier, was annexed under the county's guidelines and zoning, and I believe the city is maintaining that particular zoning designation. Now the question is, does the Florida Department of Community Affairs have any role in any of this? No. The DCA does not become involved in matters like this until such time as a formal comprehensive plan amendment is submitted to them for review. The City of Port St. Lucie has elected not to amend their local comp plan to change the land use or zoning on the parcel in question, the Egan parcel, but instead will permit the proposed use on this property, a regional wastewater plant, under mimicking the county's conditional use procedures. Essentially, they will follow our guidelines, but they will be the final adjudicating body, not the Board of County Commissioners, since it's within their regulatory jurisdiction. Of the 4 alternative sites for a regional wastewater treatment plant that were identified in the county assessment report, aside from the Egan parcel, are there any others that are still available for this particular use at this time? No, not to our knowledge. Basically, the other sites have all been committed to other development activities and therefore are essentially off the table. Now that the city has annexed the Egan property, what options does the county have? Well, since the City of Port St. Lucie has decided to adopt the annexation ordinance adding the Egan property into the boundaries of the city, the use of the conflict resolution process to address concerns about the proposed annexation frankly appears to be pointless. If the board decides to challenge the annexation of the Egan parcel, the county must file a petition for certiorari against the city, challenging the annexation in the local circuit court within 30 days from December 15, 2003. However, staff believes that this single annexation of the Egan property minimally meets the minimum requirements of Chapter 171 Florida statutes regarding annexation. Is the county suing the city? The county has initiated the conflict resolution process, which may be withdrawn at any time by the Board of County Commissioners. To date, the county has not authorized any litigation against the city, and the county has made it very clear that we are not interested in litigation. We are simply interested in better communication between the two bodies. If the board does decide to challenge the annexation of the Egan parcel, as I said a few moments ago, it must do so by January 15th of 2004, 30 days hence from the date of annexation. What action has the city taken in regard to the development of a regional wastewater plant on the property since the annexation of this parcel? The city has provided a notice, and there's a copy in your package, that on January 5th, 2004, they will hold a conditional use public hearing before their Planning and Zoning Commission on the development of a wastewater treatment plant on this property. On January 12th, the notice goes on to identify that the City Council will be holding a public hearing on the conditional use proposal for the development of a regional wastewater treatment plant. I presume that there will be a second notice that comes out for the City Council public hearing, and that the notice that was provided as a part of the Planning and Zoning hearing was more of a courtesy than a formal notice. What options are currently open to the county? Well, the county is requesting a copy of the site plans associated with the regional wastewater treatment plant. And based on a review of that application, staff will submit to the city any relevant comments regarding the site plan and the site layout of that facility. Presumably, the standards of review of the city will be those set forth in the county's land development code, since the city has elected to follow the county's conditional use regulations and design standards for this facility. Since the board will not meet again, the Board of County Commissioners will not meet again on this until after the city's planning board meeting, and your next scheduled meeting, regular meeting, is January 6th, 2004. Since that will be before the city council meeting, staff will advise the board formally of any comments relative to the site plan at your meeting of January 6th, and if necessary, request direction as to how to proceed from there. At this point in time, staff recommendations are that given the city's action in passing the annexation ordinance incorporating the Egan parcel into the city of Port St. Lucie, staff recommends that the board rescind Resolution 03-239, initiating the conflict resolution process with the city of Port St. Lucie. And we would also note that we, as we said a moment ago, will be looking to review the specific development plans for this property and verifying consistency with the codes and standards found in the Land Development Code, which is what they're supposed to be following. If you have any particular questions on this at this point in time.
Madam Chair, I do have one question. One of the key goals that you identified in that long presentation was the request for an ongoing dialogue with the city. Could you give us an update on the feedback that we've gotten regarding our interest in doing so?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Coward. I phoned Mayor Minsky about 10 after 2 this afternoon, indicating we had not received a written response back from our chair's letter. He did tell me that he cannot speak for the full city council, but he can speak for himself, and that we do have his word, that we do have Mayor Minsky's word, that he will meet with our chair, Paula Lewis, at any time to discuss any issues that the county wishes to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any further questions or comments from the board at this point? Was that the conclusion of your presentation, Mr. Murphy?
Yes, Madam Chairman, unless you have any specific questions of me.
Okay. As I indicated, we've changed the agenda at this point. If there are folks present that would like to address the board, we'd ask you to come forward, please. No one wishes to speak to this issue? I was informed there were some folks that wanted to address it.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I did not see a sign-in sheet when I came in, just a little bit late.
We didn't run one for this issue, sir.
Okay. My name is Horace Webb. I'm a property owner in the reserve. As a matter of fact, we own 3 pieces of property there beginning in 1999. And we're coming a little bit late to this process of learning with respect to the procedures concerning the siting of a sewage treatment plant, which will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of half to a quarter mile from where we live. We have seen these kinds of developments in other areas that we've lived in the United States, and they are areas which do have an impact upon the quality of life for those of us who are so unfortunate to have to live within that distance of these sewage treatment plants. The last place that we lived was in New Orleans, and the sewage treatment plant was, in fact, incorporated as a part of the property upon which the development in which our home was. And it was there, of course, before we bought the house, but we experienced the pollution, both noise and smell that comes from the natural process of treating sewage. It is not a pleasant experience, I can tell you. As I heard Mr. Murphy talk about the matters that went on with the St. Lucie County City Council and the mayor's office, there was a statement made which I think indicts the entire process. And I believe, if I recall correctly, I'm sure the reporter could tell you exactly what was said. But I believe he said, if not the Egan property, then what? I don't think that is a question that should be presented to you as county commissioners. I think that you should have been apprised of the process by which it was concluded that the Egan property was the only place that this sewage treatment plant could be sited. As I recall the chronology of events that went on, there was a matter of $100,000, I believe it was, which was purchased, which was put up as an option to purchase this property, and there was a time that option had to be exercised. I believe that was the case. And what we read in the newspaper anyway was that the process was somewhat limited by that time period at which this amount of money would have been lost by the city if it didn't go forward with the decision to purchase that property. I think that kind of thing is certainly an inappropriate limit to be put on a process where so much is at stake. And finally, in making your decisions with respect to what next to do, I disagree with any suggestion that you should not at least take this forward to arbitration. And that really has to do with the quality of life for those people who live in the area known as the PGA Village or the Reserve. There is a section of that community where we are on well. We use well water for drinking purposes. And to have a facility a half a mile or so, quarter of a mile or so from our house, from the area in which we and my grandchildren live and drink the water and use the water there, I'm very, very concerned that no matter what the technology is, that there would be seepage of sewage into the groundwater area from which the water that we in our home use to bathe and drink and do the other things that are required as a necessity of life. So I encourage you to take whatever steps that you possibly can to see that the city takes into consideration those of us who live in the county who don't seem to have a voice in the city's actions, yet the city's actions impact our lives greatly. And those are the comments that I'd like for you to consider this afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Skiles, First Peoples Bank in Port St. Lucie. And standing here before you all makes me real happy my board of directors don't sit on higher chairs than I do when we have our meetings. But I want to thank you very much for the consideration of this issue today. As the appointed representative of the St. Lucie County Chamber, which represents the business community and over 1,300 members, we strongly support the staff's recommendation to rescind the proposed conflict resolution regarding the Egan Grove annexation issue. We feel that time's of the essence to get this plant building online. It's been part of a 10-year project that started back in the 90s to provide central water and sewer to the entire PSL service area. The project's vital to the growth and prosperity of our city and county. And the plant, from all indications, is going to be built, inspected, operated using the best, most effective, environmentally sensitive, and effective management and oversight. The business community feels it's extremely important that the county and the municipalities continue to keep their options and dialogue open to resolve and avoid conflicts that mutually affect them. Ill will and harmful effects of not resolving this issue will have drastic effects on our overall economy and economic base. The other issue is the potential dollars wasted to try to do something temporarily in lieu of this being resolved. It's been estimated that $2 to $3 million would have to be passed on to the service users. So again, I want to thank you very much and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, staff, good afternoon. I am Michelle Miller. I represent the Local Affairs Committee of the St. Lucie County Chamber, and I don't feel the need to reiterate everything that Mr. Skiles said. I do concur, and on behalf of the committee and other chamber members, I would like to thank you for the consideration that you have had today and shown today. I would also like to commend your leadership and understanding of the issue and also the expediency that you are taking with this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jackie Schulman, and I don't represent a lot of business people. I live in the reserve, and I ask you to please help us. We don't have a voice in the city. We depend upon the county commissioners to protect us, and we need some protection. So please do what you can. My worry is, having seen that we don't have any influence with the city officials now, I worry that when that plant, if it's built, if it causes a problem for us, which we believe it will, we will also have no voice to get the city to fix the problem. So I hope you'll stick to your guns and help us. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, for the record, Jerry Mabus, St. Lucie Association of Realtors. I am speaking at the behest of the Board of Directors of that organization, which is some 1,000 realtors strong today. And we will ask you to follow staff's guidance. We would like to see you rescind this. And any further comments over and above what the Chamber has already said would be just repetitive, so I won't take any more time than that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Pamela Hammer, the Reserve. First, I have a question. With the staff recommending that you rescind the conflict resolution, would you still have the right and opportunity to file a writ of cert within 30 days of the annexation date?
Mr. McIntyre?
Yes.
So if you lift this conflict resolution, you could still stand with us, the residents of the Reserve, if we do proceed with the writ of cert. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. I stand before you today not as a developer that's going to make money in the city, not as a realtor who's going to sell houses and make money in the city, but as an ordinary citizen that for 20 years came down on every vacation and opportunity and searched the area from Vero Beach to West Palm for a place to settle when my husband and I would retire. And we wanted to stay within an hour or so of family, so we especially looked in St. Lucie County and made a very conscious effort not to locate within the city. We chose the Reserve because of the beauty of the area. We knew that there would be development eventually, but never in our wildest dreams did we think that there would be laws here that perhaps would allow a municipality to hopscotch around unincorporated properties and place a regional sewer plant in our backyard. We're very, very discouraged that we have put our life savings into our home where we thought we would live the rest of our lives. Quite honestly, it's a pain to come out here every Tuesday morning or Tuesday night because we didn't intend to be elected officials. It's a pain to go down to the city and be treated the way the unincorporated residents are treated. But we don't want to go into a lawsuit. But sometimes when you're backed into a corner, you have to stand up for what is right. And the actions that we have seen taken by the city are wrong. I became aware late today that the other 4 sites that were potential selections were no longer available. Now, I'm just a resident. I immediately got on the phone and called some very reputable land real estate people. They indicated that there were many other areas where it's undeveloped land that's not surrounded by houses where this sewer plant could be placed. I'm aware of other proposals that were presented, and they were rejected out of hand. I think that there was, in my opinion, a determination to put this plant at the Egan site as far away from the city residents as possible, and there was never a true evaluation of what other ways you could solve the problem. We as residents are willing to sit down with representatives from the county and from the city, and I think that with reasonable minds you can come to a solution that will be a win for everyone. I don't know what to tell you about the conflict resolution and lifting that, but I hope that won't discourage you from standing with us in filing the writ before January 15th. Thank you for taking extra time this close for Christmas. I know it's a problem for everyone, but I appreciate your consideration, your time, and your thoughtfulness in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Lindquist, resident of Pony Pines. I speak not on any official behalf of the residents of Pony Pines because I'm not an elected member there of the association, but unofficially I feel like I can speak appropriately for all of our residents that we urge you not to rescind this resolution that you've passed regarding the conflict resolution. I believe it's time to call the city of Port St. Lucie into account for their actions and to demand in this way that they sit down with the county and try to work out a more appropriate solution. As Mrs. Hammer indicated, there are so many other sites available, places where there's very much fewer residences in the area that could be looked at. And we've been through this on numerous occasions in other meetings, so we don't need to go into the details of it. But I urge you to not rescind this order. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could we get a clarification here? I thought the meeting today was simply regarding the annexation and whether there's any legal basis to proceed. This isn't I didn't know we were meeting to discuss whether or not this sewer plant is in a good place or not. And our legal staff tells us there's no legal way to challenge the annexation. So how did we end up?
Well, the issue before us is to determine what we are going to do about the conflict resolution process, which we initiated.
Regarding the annexation, though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a question of the sewer plant, it's an annexation issue.
Well, unfortunately, those two issues seem to be entwined. However, I am hoping in our discussion we can provide a little bit of separation.
Well, maybe we should have done that before we open it up for public comment, because I'm not sure people understand what we're being faced with here today. I don't think the sewer plant is in a good location, but that's not I'm not being asked to decide that today. It's whether the annexation is legally challengeable. And I understand from staff that it's not. I mean, somebody needs to convey that to the audience, whether they're pro or con the sewer plant, I think. Could we ask Mr. McIntyre to give us his opinion before we...
If you wish, certainly.
I would love to hear that. I mean, the sewer plant is a different issue or correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. Commissioner Barnes, at the December 9th meeting, and you weren't there, the similar question was asked. Basically, it's my understanding of the law on a voluntary annexation that the property has to be contiguous and reasonably compact. And in terms of being compact, that means it can't create pockets or enclaves. It can't be winding or serpentine. And this is just my opinion, but when I look at this particular site, it appears to me to meet the statutory requirements for annexation. It appears to be contiguous and reasonably compact. So from that perspective, I do not see any reason that we could challenge this annexation.
Okay, well, it sounds like the sewer plant is a separate issue. What if the county were to determine that the sewer plant was a threat to health or safety? What other measures outside of this, which doesn't appear to have any legal merit, what other avenues are there to take that issue and address it on its own.
Well, they're in the zoning process, since they're using the conditional use process of the county, there are standards that they're required to address the effect on adjacent properties and on the surrounding communities. So there are opportunities in that process potentially to look at those kinds of issues and buffering and the location of the plant.
What about state permitting?
In addition, there are permits that they are required to get. They have, as I understand it, they've applied for state permits, and there is a notice of intent to issue the state permits that has been published in the paper. So they're well along in the process to getting the plant permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jim Lamar, and I also live in the reserve, and I'm not going to speak about the sewer plant right now. I think many of my resident friends have made those points very clear, but I am concerned about the rampant annexation, and I thought that's what the conflict resolution was meant to arrange and to address. You can look back, and I can look back at the public record, but there are many cases of annexation, and we talked about with the city about annexation and land use changes. You know, one is a land use change. It's not annexation, but it was in anticipation of annexation. And there are so many of them invading the western county that it doesn't look like a plan to me. It looks like it's out of control. And there needs to be planned management and planned growth so that all the facilities are there. So we would ask that you maintain your position on the conflict resolution so that we can get some of these issues addressed with annexation. Thank you.
Bill Hammer, I'm a resident of Reserve. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Back to Mr. McIntyre's comment, I have a fundamental question. Regarding the city utilization of the conditional land use under the county's regulations for land use that are set forth for this property after annexation. Is there oversight on the part of the county so that the city does not become the judge and the jury on its own issue in determining what is an appropriate conditional use? Can they be held to the standards by the county that the county has established for this land use permitting? The second piece of the issue has to do with what you're facing specifically before you today, the issue of whether to go ahead with the conflict resolution. I understand the legal position that you may find yourself in on this individual site. I would urge you, if you drop the conflict resolution, that you leave the door open very specifically, that as additional annexations take place, if the aggregate total of any annexations with the Egan property is such that it may be in violation of 171, I believe is the chapter citation, that you are able to come back when additional annexations take place, creating enclaves, which is pretty obvious that's where it's heading, and make sure that you're able to do that and do it in timely fashion. You may have to file in order to meet a statutory deadline in order to do this. I'll leave that up to you. But there are two issues which I think are critical to what we're dealing here. Thank you again for your patience in dealing with these issues.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from the public?
Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners and staff, my name is Jim McKenzie, and I'm here representing the Treasure Coast Builders Association. It's 1,200 members and some 14,000 employees. Our president and chairperson was unable to be here today, so they asked me to fill in. The Builders Association applauds your interest and desire to hear this issue and to take the time in your hectic schedule for this public comment. The Builders Association supports staff's recommendations with reference to the annexation. But for reasons of not greed, growth, and sincerely, we are not the evil developers as we have often been portrayed.
but we're concerned about sensible growth planning, job creation, and many families that are looking at the American dream of owning a home. Postponing this project through conflict resolution or any of the other issues will rob many of those families of their dream. Home ownership has its advantages to the local economy. Based on some 4,000 permits, the local income has increased by over $500 million. That's $400 million in wages and $41 million in taxes. Sensible growth, which we believe is part of what you are charged with, continues to be an example of what has kept St. Lucie County from feeling the recent economic downturn. The annexation issue is but one intersection of many that will come on the road to growth in St. Lucie County. We appeal to you to enter this intersection with caution, but not with roadblocks and stop signs. This and other projects is essential to that road's completion. It has long been in the planning stages, and we hope that it goes forward. The Treasure Coast Builders Association commits to you in helping to meet with the cities and the counties on any issue and to set up any kinds of discussion that might be needed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Sandra Woodhams. I live not in the reserve, not in Pony Pines. I'm not a developer, a realtor, or anything like that. We bought 40 acres to get out of the city. And now there's developers buying up all of the large parcels of property surrounding Pony Pines and the reserve and other small pockets. And unless you put your foot down and say that enough is enough, you either coordinate with us or you don't do it or come up with some kind of solution that everybody is satisfied. Without that, it's just open season. And there won't be anything left out there but rooftops. And the rest of us live out there to get away from that. We all bought 40-acre parcels of property. Not a quarter-acre piece, you know. We don't want it. We don't want to see rooftops out there. And unless you say enough is enough, you either coordinate with us or we'll take you to court. That's what needs to be done.
Thank you. Are there any further comments at this time? Seeing no one, we will return to the board at this point in time. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, just backing up for a minute to Commissioner Barnes's comments about the reason we're here, I guess, is the best way to simplify it. I think the conflict resolution was initiated on a specific case, but I think the issues at hand go well beyond just the sewage treatment plant. I think that's why the comments are broader than that. In my mind, the issue is not whether the sewage treatment plant needs to be built. It's not an issue of whether this growth is going to occur. It really gets back to, I think, what Mr. McKenzie laid out in terms of sensible growth planning. And I think that's the message that the County Commission has been trying to send. About a year and a half ago, possibly two, when the first annexations came on board, the county tried to initiate a joint planning agreement with the city to deal with future annexations, land use compatibility, transportation network. We did not make very much progress on that, unfortunately. I think that would have been the best way to avoid where we're at this stage. We've talking about an area about 40 to 42 square miles that's being annexed into the city of Port St. Lucie. I'm not sure if people understand the magnitude of 40 to 42 square miles. To educate myself, I researched how big some existing cities are, and I found that the city of Miami is 37 square miles. The borough of the Bronx is 42 square miles. Manhattan is 23 square miles. So what we're talking about doing is annexing and enlarging a city about twice the size of Manhattan, and doing so without having a master plan in hand or intergovernmental coordination with the other service providers who have to deal with the impacts of this growth. So I do not believe that what you're hearing from this county commission is that the growth should not occur. We're saying the growth that you are talking about proceeding with is immense, it has long-term consequences, and we need to be involved in the process. And that's what we've been asking for throughout. So I personally don't believe you can have sensible growth planning if you don't have an ongoing dialogue with the city. And we've made attempts to do that. A second example is the PGA Village Development of Regional Impact. 6,000 homes, 350 hotel rooms, 250,000 square feet of retail and office space. That development occurred through the approval process of the city with very limited involvement from the county or the residents. The residents were in at the end of the process, trying to state their concerns. The traffic from that was approved by the city, linking into residential streets where people have invested their life savings in a single-family home at the end of a cul-de-sac, which is now supposed to connect with the development of this size. It's an example of the lack of coordination that's going on between the city and the county. And it's our job as county commissioners to not only be concerned about the future of Port St. Lucie, but the welfare of the unincorporated county residents that are directly affected by this. So I think the last straw for me was the city finally decided to move forward with the Urban Land Institute study to try and plan out this area. I think it should have been done in advance of all this development, but at least it's being done now. County Commission requested to be a part of that process. We've got a letter back from the city saying, you're not welcome to be a part of that process. It doesn't make any sense to me. The development in this 40 square miles, the impacts of that development do not stop at the city limits. They spill over and affect county roads, schools, fire, law enforcement. They affect unincorporated county residents. We absolutely should be involved in that process. So when we have the development community come forward today telling us to rescind this and to promote sensible growth planning, I would ask that we also urge the city to work with the county in a cooperative fashion for the best interest of the city of Port St. Lucie and for St. Lucie County as a whole. So I think that's the larger issue in my mind. It is not just this plant. It's the need for the city of Port St. Lucie and the county to have a cooperative working relationship for the best interest of this community. And that's what I'm personally seeking. And I don't know if there's a city representative beyond the mayor's comments who can provide some feedback on that. But that's what I want to hear from the city, is that they're interested in working with us on these issues.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I agree with 100% of what you said, but today my understanding, and I think legal confirmed it, we're not talking about all these other issues. It's nice to have a forum. In fact, we ought to have a forum where the city and the county get together and one side and above the other lecturing the other side, but we exchange ideas on this, and I know you've been pressing for this, but my only comment was directed at the specific issue today. I don't believe I can consider whether or not the sewer plan is a good thing or a bad thing, or whether or not they've not cooperated on all these other issues, and I agree they're important. My only comment was that I thought we were focused today on whether this, not the 42 square miles, but this one little parcel is contiguous under state law and beyond our challenge, or if it creates enclaves and all those other issues that you can challenge it under state law, and our legal has told us basically it's right up against it. It's not creating enclaves, and I agree there are 100 other issues we ought to be talking with the city about, but today I think we're just here on this one small parcel, and I hope we'll have a forum on all those other issues as you've discussed, because I agree with you.
Well, I personally see points in what both of you just said. We are here today to discuss a somewhat lesser issue, but at least from my point of view, this lesser issue would not have I would not have reacted this way to this lesser issue if there had not been a greater issue of cooperation and responsiveness involved. I think Commissioner Hutchinson said it for me when we had our original meeting on December 9th, and she said we need to open a door. That was my intention here. I have said it so many times over the past couple of weeks, I'm beginning to feel as if, it's kind of programmed. We are not initiating litigation. That was not our intent. Conflict resolution, if you read the statute, the purpose of it, as stated at the beginning, I wish I'd brought it with me, but it's too long to read anyway, states that you are resolving a conflict. It does not say you are going to court. You need to do that before you go to court, but it doesn't say that when it states the purpose of conflict resolution in the statute. I find that interesting. It's somewhere further back in the pages. It says you can initiate this process when there is a conflict between governmental entities. We had a conflict between governmental entities. For all intents and purposes, I guess it's still there. But I do feel some progress has been made. because the mayor has responded that he will be willing to sit down and talk. I think that will get it off of dead center. Hopefully we can move forward with a sense of trust and cooperation that these issues will be addressed. When I looked at this, obviously the particular piece that is under consideration or has been annexed was the thing that touched off the action we took. But there was much more to it than that. And I think the things that Commissioner Coward has touched on, they're not all going to be resolved in one fell swoop, and that's not what we're looking at doing today. What we are looking at doing today is agreeing to resolve them in the future by cooperation and coordination and a lot of discussion. I personally, and this is something I've said to the mayor, so I think maybe I need to say it publicly, I do not see that my expressing my views to the city is telling them what to do. And I know I was told, you cannot tell us what to do. No, I cannot. I have no legal means to compel you to do what I would like you to do. I don't want to have that. I think the city needs to govern their own affairs. And given the fact that I live in the city and everything I own is in the city, I obviously want them to do it in a nice way. I want them to progress. I want them to develop. But I do think, I do just wish to reiterate that expressing my concerns, even expressing my opinion, is not necessarily taking away the city's right to determine their own destiny. By no means do I quarrel with that. The City Council is quite capable of resolving these issues, but there are issues relating to my responsibilities that need to be addressed by them and with them. Specifically, my ability to do my job as relates to county residents, as relates to county roadways. This is all affected by the annexations that are occurring. Whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, that's for the City Council to decide what they need the city to be and to do. But we need to talk about these things as they affect the shape of the county and the shape of things that I need to do within the county. That's where I was coming from. I also expressed the thought, and I will express it publicly, that I'm sorry I took a sledgehammer to open the door, because that's the effect it had. But I'm very glad that there seems to have been an opening of some channels of communication that were not there before, and perhaps a recognition of what we're all about will result. Were there any other comments?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to get some questions answered from staff real quick, or just a clarification before I make my comments. Mr. Murphy, could we go back to, in your recital of all that took place in answering some of the questions that have been out there, I want to go back and touch on, and unfortunately the public doesn't have this in their hand, but on number 7, what options are open to the county? And this involves the using the county's jurisdiction or conditional use zoning. Could we touch base on that, on ways the county would be able to work with the city, hopefully, in addressing some of the issues that are still outstanding in regard to this site?
Specific design standards on the site for the condition for the wastewater plant?
Well, that's one of the questions that have come up, is if, as the city moves forward, because they already have annexed this piece in, and if they're using the conditional uses under the county rules, will those forms be coming to the county for review, such as the site plan, and will we be making comments as far as our concerns according to our codes on there?
It would be my understanding that we would, unless we requested it, and I indicated that we will be sending a request down to get a copy of the site plan, we are not going to be a primary reviewer of the application. Our standing in this, as I understand it, and Mr. McIntyre can correct me, would be that more of just any other interested citizen or citizens group in this process. The expectation is that the city will, in essence, just take our land development code and follow the processes and procedures established in that code to determine consistency with everything they have to determine consistency with for running the conditional use. They will not pick up the city code. They've elected to keep the county zoning. They've elected to follow the county process. the final adjudication will be done by the City Council. Our role in this would be as any other private interest group, making sure they follow the rules.
And Mr. McIntyre, I know you've already been on record several times. In fact, at the very first meeting 2 weeks ago, you had indicated that you don't feel from a legal standpoint that this meets the requirements, or that the property, the annexation, does meet the requirements. Under the assumption that the county was to move forward, what in your mind would be the legal cost to the taxpayers as far as knowing that this was a challenge that may not be won?
You mean if the county were to file a petition and actually challenge the...
It's the what-if scenario. If we were to file forward, what would be the cost approximately? Time frame, all of that.
Well, in terms of the cost to the county, there probably wouldn't be any direct cost. We would handle it in-house. There would be certainly time involved of the county's legal staff, but there would be their paid staff members. There would be a potential indirect cost to the city, in the sense that the effect of it would potentially delay the construction of the plant, and so there would be indirect costs. It could affect their bond financing, and that could have a very much a negative effect on their plans. They would be a better position to address that, but from a county perspective, there wouldn't be any direct cost to us.
Right. Madam Chair, Commissioner Coward, I know last Tuesday you had made the comment that this was one of your hardest decisions that you've had to make in 5 years, and I'm sitting here today telling you this is probably one of my hardest ones in the past 5 years. First off, I want to tip my hat to the 3 city council members that are sitting in the audience. I appreciate you being here and hearing it instead of out on the street or through rumor what this board's discussing. In light of the fact, and one of the things that I have always hoped for was that the city would move, at least for consideration, to consider the other 4 sites that the county had asked you to look at. 8 months later, it's water under the bridge. In light of that fact, and that to continue to look for sites at this point, I don't know, in light of the fact that Port St. Lucie is running out of space, and their residents within the city limits are facing possible safety and health issues to come out of it. I would have a much better comfort level if I knew firsthand from the city council on record that you have a willingness to work with the county on the issues that we've discussed, that the issues that not only the Port St. Lucie city residents face, but also the unincorporated residents. And that's my dilemma at this point, because as Commissioner Coward had pointed out earlier, I've not seen much coordination in the past 5 months. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we're here today asking something that's going to be putting everybody on the spot if we move forward. Madam Chairman, I'll leave it at that.
Madam Chair, this question, when the city of Fort Pierce tries to annex the airport with a 10-foot driveway, they know we're coming. They know that they're not doing the annexation correctly. Port St. Lucie got upset because they are doing it correctly, and they're wondering why we're yelling at them or why they're sitting here today. I hope we can work out our differences. I don't know if we have differences other than they're upset we went to this point, but I want us to work together. I want us to work with the residents. I want us both to make everything the way, good for everybody. But the issue here is whether this piece of property is being annexed correctly. And from the statute I read and from Mr. McIntyre, it is. So it's hard to blame Port St. Lucie for being a little upset when they think they're doing it right, and probably are doing it right, and they get this thrown at them. So I just would like to find another way to approach Port St. Lucie where we can work together without going to this point. Like Mayor Minsky, maybe meeting with our chair once a month. We used to do that, and we should institute that where all the mayors meet with our chairs. Other members meet with other members of other councils once a month. I mean, anything else other than having to threaten to go to a lawsuit or violate a statute that doesn't need to be done. I just think we need to find an alternative to work things out. And threats of lawsuits, and we've got that problem with Fort Pierce.
Well, once again, I must say that on my part at least, and I didn't hear from anyone else that there was a threat of a lawsuit. I think we pretty much discussed roughly 2 weeks ago that we were not talking litigation. We were talking getting the doors open to communication. That was my intent right along. Now, if I am told that it is not necessary for me to institute that procedure to get that to happen, I'm willing to give that a try.
Madam Chair, following along that same line, Mr. Anderson, there was been a letter from Mr. Cooper that responded back to the conflict resolution to set a meeting up for January 8th. If this is rescinded, would that meeting still continue, or is that decided not important anymore?
Dan, do you want to answer that, or you're going to answer that?
There would be no reason to meet if the resolution were rescinded. The conflict resolution meeting that was going to take place on January 8th would have focused on the Egan parcel, and it would have just been between county and city staff, not involving the elected officials, which is what the letter that Commissioner Lewis sent, I think, is a different process altogether. This would be state mandated and just a staff-to-staff on the Egan annexation. So it will, if the board decides to accept staff recommendation, there will be no January 8th meeting.
Then may I suggest that if this is dropped, that the meetings still continue to go on in light of the fact that Port St. Lucie, not necessarily under the annexation of the Egan piece, but more on the issues as a whole, especially in light of the fact that I believe they've got meetings, we were given, January 5th and 12th or something like that?
Yes, ma'am. We can certainly continue to meet. It just would be on a broader basis and more informal.
I think in light of everything else, it would be a good show of faith on your side.
Well, my understanding of what has been offered is that I will meet with Mayor Minsky initially, and I was hoping that when we got together we could determine a framework, perhaps some issues that we could discuss and get to work on immediately, because there are some things upcoming. One of the major reasons that I proceeded with the conflict resolution was the fact that on the same agenda as this annexation were some land use changes that indicated to me the shape of things to come, and I felt that was something we needed to look at immediately, if not sooner. I've expressed this to the mayor already. At that point in time, we were agreeing to disagree, I guess, so there was no conclusion reached, but I'm hoping that we will, when we get together, be able to set up a framework, and I would certainly hope to be able to include other board members and or staff as we proceed. Obviously, neither of us individually can make determinations for our respective boards, but I think if we were to get together and, for want of a better terminology, kind of get our ducks in a row and decide what it is we need to talk about, we could get our boards together and perhaps make some progress.
Madam Chair, just briefly, do we have a map that will show the current city limits, the boundary of the service area, and the annexations that Commissioner Lewis is alluding to? Do we have the ability to put that map up for a second?
We can put this map, Madam Chairman, Commissioner Kara, this map is...
do you have a broader map than that shows...
Yeah. Hang on a second. This is off the city's webpage, and it's a good map. That's why I pulled it up.
Can you key in on the reserve just for a moment?
Right here.
Yeah, just key in on that area. That's unincorporated county, and the areas immediately to the southwest are in the city limits through the annexation with PGA Village. The area to the north is the LTC ranch, and on the west edge is the sewage treatment plant. And the issue about needing to have coordination is that right now, the new annexations that are being talked about, can you point out the Lennar Homes?
Let me zoom.
It's on the west edge of the reserve. Essentially, the unincorporated county is being encircled by the city of Port St. Lucie, and state law precludes the creation of enclaves. Concern is right now there's legislation pending, I believe, by Senator Constantine that would essentially allow a city to involuntarily or forcibly annex areas of unincorporated county into the city limits. That legislation was pending last year and apparently is back on the radar screen again. So there are concerns about what is the long-term plan for this area that also needs to be addressed. So I just wanted to, since people are here, they're interested in the topic, I want you to understand we want to be working with the city on this future annexation plan, as opposed to right now where we're kind of left out of the loop and we're also seeing state laws change. It would basically forcibly allow thousands of unincorporated residents to be annexed into a city, and I'm personally not supportive of that concept.
Well, if there are no further comments, we do have a staff recommendation here to rescind Resolution 03-239, which initiated the conflict resolution process. That is most narrowly why we are here today, to address that issue. All these other things, I think, did have certainly bearing on whether we would do that or not. But if there are no further comments from the board, I think we're ready to entertain a motion.
Move staff recommendation. Second.
Madam Chair, under discussion, one of the reasons that this is important to me is I think we've got several large-scale economic development projects that are on the radar screen right now that I think are extremely meaningful to both Port St. Lucie as well as the county. I think we've all said it over and over, the need to diversify this tax base and get more jobs in here. One of the primary reasons that I'm going to vote in favor of this is because I do not want to jeopardize an $80 million facility. However, the issues that we raised, I feel very committed to trying to work with the city to resolve, and I hope that we can have that coordination from this point forward. So this is an olive branch, and I hope we can move forward together.
Thank you, Mr. Coward. Any further comments under discussion?
Madam Chairman, just one more. I would like to invite the very groups that came before us today to speak in their support of this issue of staff's recommendation, that you show the Port St. Lucie City Council the same in requesting their coordination with the county on these very same issues.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hutchison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coward?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Broom? Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Is there anything further from the board? From staff?
Madam Chair, let's follow up on Commissioner Hutchinson's recommendation about the 8th or as a possible meeting. Did I understand that you wanted to have a meeting first with the mayor, and then we would try and schedule something thereafter?
That was my understanding, that he and I would get together, and I will get on the phone with him tomorrow.
I think it would be. I think the meetings between the mayor and the county commission chair, I think, is wise. But I think we ought to have regular meetings with the city. We've had good relations with them in the past. I look at the CRA and that becoming an economic engine. That's an example of us partnering with the city. And I think if we'd have that ongoing dialogue, I think it would really foster a better relation. So I think we should try and schedule quarterly or even 2 meetings a year or something to have an ongoing dialogue.
Well, I think that's something that can be set up. As I said, and with regard to this immediate issue, my intent was to meet with the mayor, see what we can set up between us, and then come back to the boards, and perhaps we can get a regular schedule going then, if that's the will of both boards.
Madam Chairman, I just want to comment. I'm glad to see that you're going to reinitiate the idea of getting together with both mayors. I know when I was chair, that was something that I had done on a monthly basis, and it really seemed to help improve relations during that time.
Well, that was my intention. Once again, this is kind of separate and distinct from that, but I will be doing that as well. If there's nothing further, we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you.